If you spend much time on social media these days, in the hunting circles, you'll probably hear about the dreaded evil doe factory. Oh, they are to be loathed and hated at every level. And man, if you don't pay the right people the right amount of money, and you go out and try to improve your habitat at all, that's what you're going to do. You're going to have nothing but does. What are doe factories? Well, Mr. Big, yeah, during the rut, he likes to be around does for obvious reasons, particularly a special kind of doe. But for the majority of the rest of the year, he doesn't much care for it. He would rather be by himself. Over winter, when they yard up, does he tolerate it? Of course he does. Over summer, when they're in their buddy bachelor groups, he tolerates it. But during most of deer season, outside of during active breeding, he wants to be by himself. This is particularly true as it applies to Mr. Big's bedding spot. Right. You think about the dominant buck in the area. The dominant buck in the area, in the deer world, he can take whatever the heck he wants whenever he wants to. This is his world. What is most important throughout the entire year for bucks, more important than anything else? Personal safety, and that's even during breeding. Yeah, it gets a little closer, but even during breeding, hey, you doubt me for a second, you get between a buck and a buck that's on a doe and with a weapon, I promise you that deer is going to head the other way, away from that doe. Where you really get yourself in trouble is when does and fawns and young bucks are overrunning Mr. Big's bedding area. How do you do that? It's real easy. You go out there and you improve every inch of your property with things that will go ahead and enhance it for does. You make it so you got more browse, more food all over. Next thing you know, the does are all over. You want to make it so you don't have a doe factory. It's really simple. What you do is around your primary food source, just back far enough so that you can get in and hunt and get out without disturbances. Stack your does around the food source as close as you can without them busting you. And then leave those backsides, those areas, those big ridges that have those knobs that overlook the whole valley. That swamp area where he loves to be out on that island. Any of those areas, what you do is you go ahead and you don't improve them with food. You improve them with food, you draw does and fawns and young bucks. Dead zones are very important within your property. By dead zones, I mean areas that deer aren't stacked up in. If you're going to hunt your property and you don't have dead zones, how are you going to get to your stands to hunt? How are you going to hunt them? What's your safe wind? How are you going to get out without educating your deer? Dead zones are key. Everybody wants to improve every inch of their ground. You do that, you're going to have a doe factory. You are, because you are going to have does that are all over that property. They want to be close to the food. You got food everywhere. So instead, segregate your property. These are the locations I got my food. I stack the does around them and I leave those back areas alone.
Final thoughts brought to you by Huntworth.
We talk these days so much, there's so much talk about doe factories. One thing that it doesn't, there's all sorts of properties out there that, you know what, bucks just aren't going to bed on them because the neighbors have primo buck bedding. In that case, turn that property into a doe factory, because that food and those does become your trap during the rut. Okay. If your property is set up and large enough to be able to hold both does and bucks on the property, well, don't make improvements that will draw does and young bucks around Mr. Big's bedding area. In other words, don't add food there. Leave that alone, leave that for him. You concentrate on the food plots and the areas around the food plots to suck those does in. So now we've got Mr. Big living back here all pretty much by him's lonesome, and we got all our does here and everyone is happy. You don't want a doe factory, don't put food on every inch of your ground. And have prime buck bedding that's left alone.